The pilots who fly the B-2 stealth bomber are entrusted with one of the most lethal pieces of weaponry on Earth, one of the most expensive and dangerous weapons ever created. These pilots are chosen because of their intelligence and capabilities. Listen to one of them teach us how to become the best in the world in whatever you do.
I'm here to tell you a secret. It's a secret I learned as a fighter and bomber pilot in the Air Force. It's how to become the best in the world at what you do. I'd like to start by sharing a conversation I had with my teenage son. I told him, "Your life is going to be hard. It can be hard because you decided not to pay the price to become valuable and will be left with limited options. Or it can be hard because you've paid the price. And paying the price is hard. But if you'll pay the price to become valuable, then your options become unlimited." Ever since I was a little dude, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And in 1992, I was an ROTC cadet at BYU, studying to become a fighter pilot. I was paying my own way. I was working hard. And one day I walked into the ROTC building, and a staff member said, "You're not going to be a fighter pilot." I looked at him and I said, "Why not?" He said, "The Air Force has cut the number of pilot training slots from 1,000 a year down to about 100. I looked him in the eye and I said, "I don't care if they only choose one. As long as they choose one, it's going to be me." And about a year later, I was awarded a scholarship for being the top pilot candidate in the nation. But let me explain something to you. The people who know me best would say I'm not smart enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not good looking enough. And yet, I made up my mind that I would become the best at what I did. So when somebody tells you that you can't do what you want to do, look them in the eye and say there's always room at the top for the best. In 2003, I was part of an elite group of Air Force pilots who flew the B-2 stealth bomber. We were tasked with taking down Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq. Flying 36-hour nonstop missions, we flew from Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, across the Atlantic to downtown Baghdad, some of the most heavily defended airspace on the planet. Although we had left 18 hours prior, we arrived to the target within 1 minute of our assigned time. We returned home 36 hours after we departed, and we were undetected by the enemy and unscathed. The stealth bomber and the pilots who fly it are truly the best in the world at what they do. I'd like to talk a little bit about what it takes to become the best in the world. That's the secret I want you to take away tonight. A lot of people have the misunderstanding that execution is the key to excellence. And while execution's an important part of it, it's only a small part. The guy is stuck in execution mode. Execution alone doesn't work because it robs you of the chance to learn from your experience. We had a very simple model: plan, execute, debrief. Let me illustrate by discussing a little more detail about that 36-hour mission I flew. It's exhausting. And by the end of this mission, we had been on the job for 40 hours straight. Now, what would you want to do after being on the job for 40 hours straight? You go home, right? You want to go home. We wanted to go home pretty badly. But we spent the next 2 hours after landing in a debrief. And in the debrief, we answered 5 questions. What happened? What went right? What went wrong? Why? And what can we learn from this? 58% of the time was spent in the execution phase. And 3% of the time was spent in the debrief. But that 3% makes all the difference. That's where the learning takes place. That's where the improvement happens. So, how do you debrief? Well, the first step is to ask, what happened? Now, in the what happened phase, it sounds simple. but it's really not. It's really actually difficult because our nature is that we want to defend ourselves. We want to blame somebody else for what's gone wrong, and somebody becomes defensive. So this what happened phase gives us a chance to reconstruct the events objectively. We're not trying to place blame or judgment. Then we ask the question, what went right? We want to keep doing those things. Next, what went wrong? Well, this is a really important question, but once again, if you'll notice, it doesn't say who screwed up. It's really easy to say who screwed up, but it's really important that we not do that because what went wrong gives us a chance to break down the next question, why? And once again, it doesn't say who, it says why. We can do that. We can get to a root cause, identify what's called a lessons learned, and roll that back into our planning cycle. So, before the next aircrew took off for their combat mission in Iraq, our lessons learned were already incorporated into the planning cycle. That's how you become the best in the world. I've used this principle to get into Harvard Business School, and where you're like, well, yeah, maybe you're smart, but the people who know me would disagree with that, right? The people who know me best go, I don't know how he did that. I spent the time learning from my mistakes, practicing and getting better. And then, even though it's been a long day, and even though I'm tired, and even though I want to go home, after I'm done teaching, I go back into my office and I answer 5 questions. What happened? What went right? What went wrong? Why? And what can I learn? I record careful notes on the things I'm going to improve next time. So tonight, I want to end with a challenge. I want you to decide now to become the best in the world at whatever you want to do. I want you to commit to paying that price. I'd like to start by sharing a conversation I had with my teenage son. I told him, your life is going to be hard. It can be hard because you decided not to pay the price to become valuable and will be left with limited options. Or it can be hard because you've paid the price. And paying the price is hard. But if you'll pay the price to become valuable, then your options become unlimited.